My whole family smiled looking at my baby, and in front of my whole family said, "You ruined your life with that." Everyone laughed. And then my husband, who was supposed to be on a business trip, suddenly walked into the room with something in his hands, and it made everyone regret that they had opened their mouths at all. I was setting the plates on the dining room table when I heard my sister's cheer announcing the arrival of our parents. The house filled with the sound of greetings and chattering voices. I smiled at my reflection in the silver spoon polished to a shine. The family dinner, dedicated to my daughter Emily, was off to the best possible start. "Lindsay, are you sure you don't need any help?" Verna, my best friend, came into the kitchen carrying a bouquet of peonies. "Everything's under control," I nodded, adjusting the impeccably ironed tablecloth. "No, can you check to see if Emily's awake? She should be the star of the evening." Verna nodded and disappeared in the direction of the nursery, and I fell back into the familiar ritual of preparing the perfect dinner. 6 months ago, when Emily had been born, Noah and I had decided to wait until she was a little older before having a big family reunion. Sure, everyone had already seen pictures and visited us individually, but this was the first time the whole family got together to celebrate a new member. Guests slowly filled the living room. My parents, Diane and Robert, always punctual, had arrived first and were now chatting with my sister Rachel and her husband George. My mother-in-law, Martha, arrived accompanied by her sister Elizabeth. A few family friends and a couple of Noah's co-workers completed the company. "Honey, you're overdoing it again," Mom commented, peeking into the kitchen. "This dinner could have been so much simpler." "I wanted it to be special," I replied, taking the flavorful roast out of the oven. Mom only shook her head, but refrained from further comment. Soon Verna returned with a waking Emily in her arms. My little girl, dressed in a cream dress, blinked sleepily as she looked at the gathered guests. "There's our princess!" I exclaimed, picking up my daughter. "Let's go and meet the whole family." In the living room, Emily was greeted with enthusiastic cheers. Everyone wanted to hold her, to look at her, to tell me who she looked more like. "Definitely Lindsay's eyes," Aunt Elizabeth said, studying my daughter's face. "And Noah's stubborn chin," Rachel laughed. I watched with a warm smile, though there was still a twinge of anxiety inside me. It seemed to me that my family's reaction to my pregnancy had been subdued. My mother and sister were acting especially strange, as if they expected me to change my mind at the last moment. My mother-in-law, Martha, hadn't shown much enthusiasm either. But now, looking at their smiling faces, I thought I had exaggerated their coolness. Dinner went smoothly. I moved from table to kitchen and back again, keeping the conversation going and making sure everyone had enough food and drink. Noah wasn't due back from his business trip for another 3 days, and I was feeling a little disappointed that he'd be gone at such an important time. After the main course, I carried Emily back to her crib. She was starting to get cranky, clearly exhausted from the attention. When I returned for dessert, I stopped at the kitchen door when I heard my name called. "Lindsay was always so promising." Martha's voice sounded unexpectedly loud in the sudden silence. "I remember Noah talking about her ambitions, her plans for the future. And now, look at her, she's stuck at home with a baby when all her peers are pursuing careers." I froze, hesitant to enter or give away my presence. "Robert and I are worried too," my mother sighed. "She could be a leading psychologist, but instead she's changing diapers." "Motherhood is a wonderful thing," Aunt Elizabeth interjected uncertainly. "Sure, in its own time," Martha said. "But Lindsay is still so young. Honestly, I think she's ruined her life with this baby." Laughter rang through the room, and I felt the ground go away from under my feet. They were laughing, all of them, at my choices, at my daughter, at my life. "And you know what the saddest part was?" Rachel continued. "She doesn't even realize what happened. Walks around with this perpetual smile, like she's really happy. Maybe we could, my mother began. But that's when I heard the sound of the front door opening. Noah appeared in the doorway of the living room. His face was pale, and his eyes were lightning fast. In his hand, he held something small. I didn't immediately realize it was a tape recorder. Noah! Martha exclaimed, clearly surprised to see her son. We thought you were in Chicago. There's been a change of plans, he replied dryly, walking to the center of the room. When he caught sight of me in the kitchen doorway, he froze for a moment, his eyes filled with a look of pain that took my breath away. What's wrong? I asked, entering the room. Noah shook his head and raised his hand with the recorder. I came back early because I wanted to surprise you, but the real surprise was waiting for me. For the past few months, I'd been noticing strange things. Colleagues were asking how you were dealing with depression. Friends were wondering if it was true that we were discussing divorce. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? What divorce? Exactly. Noah nodded. I began to notice a pattern. These questions would come up after you talked to certain people in this room. He glanced around the room, and I saw the pale faces of my mother and sister. So I decided to do a little investigating, Noah continued, picking up the recorder. And this is what I found. He pressed the play button, and the room filled with my mother's voice. I'm seriously concerned about Lindsay. She's completely failing at motherhood, but stubbornly refuses to admit it. Noah's hardly ever home. All the responsibility is on her, and she's always been so fragile. I felt nausea coming up my throat. The recording continued. Rachel and I think someone should talk to Noah directly. Maybe if he realizes how this is affecting her mental health, they'll reconsider their decision to keep the baby. Keep the baby? I shifted my gaze to the mother, who was now looking at the floor. Noah hit the rewind button and turned on another recording, this time Rachel's voice. I happened to meet Martha at the supermarket. We discussed the situation with Lindsay. She too thinks the baby was a mistake. I think if we join forces, we can help Lindsay get her life back to normal. The room fell into silence, broken only by the mechanical noise of the tape recorder rewinding the tape. There's more, Noah said, looking at the shocked faces of the guests. Like how you spread rumors about our marriage, or how you tried to convince my colleagues that Lindsay was suffering from postpartum depression. I couldn't move. Every word hit like a slap in the face. My own family, people I trusted unconditionally, had been plotting behind my back for months. Why? Was all I could squeeze out. My mother rose from her seat. Lindsay, honey, you don't understand. We did it out of love. We saw you sacrifice your career, your dreams. My dreams? I interrupted, feeling a wave of anger rising inside me. Did you ask me what my dreams were? Or did you just think you knew better than me? You've always been too soft, too compliant, Rachel interjected. We were afraid that you just went along with Noah's desire to have a child. Noah let out a short laugh. It's funny, because your daughter and sister was the one who initiated the pregnancy. I was the one who questioned whether we were ready. I looked at the faces of the people I considered closest to me. Their faces showed embarrassment, but not remorse. They really believed they knew what was best for me. I think it's time for everyone to leave, I said quietly. Lindsay, let's not make any hasty decisions, Martha began, but Noah interrupted her abruptly. You heard my wife. The evening is over. The guests began to rise awkwardly, gathering their things. No one made eye contact with me. Only Verna, who had been standing off to the side the whole time, came over and hugged me tightly. Call me when you're ready to talk. I nodded, unable to utter a word. When the door closed behind the last guest, I collapsed onto the couch, still unable to comprehend what had happened. My world, which had seemed so solid, had shattered. Noah sat down next to me and took my hand. I'm so sorry, Lindsay, he whispered. I should have told you sooner, but I wanted to gather evidence. They were poisoning our lives, spreading lies. Emily's cries came from the nursery, and I automatically got up to go to her. I'll go. Noah stopped me. Get some rest. Alone, I stared at the table, where there had been pretend merriment not so long ago. All those smiles, all that talk about how wonderful Emily's baby was, it was all a lie. My family, The people who were supposed to support me unconditionally actually thought my baby was a mistake, a ruined life. Noah returned with Emily in his arms. She had already calmed down and was now studying her father's face curiously. Looking at them, I felt something change inside me. It wasn't just the pain of betrayal, but a strange, new sensation. It was as if my eyes had finally opened, and I saw the truth I'd refused to see for so long. You know, I said, looking at my daughter, they're wrong. Emily didn't ruin my life. She showed me what she was really like. Mom always said a girl should be like water, soft, pliable, taking the shape of whatever vessel they pour it into. Lindsay, smile and be quiet, was a phrase I'd heard more often than my own name since I was a little girl, especially when Uncle Frank made his crude jokes at family dinners, or when Mrs. Burton, the neighbor, criticized a school project I'd been working on all week. Rachel, my older sister, was different. She was defiant, argumentative, assertive. My mom would roll her eyes and whisper to me, "See? No one likes a girl who talks too much." And I would nod, absorbing the lesson like a sponge. To be inconspicuous, comfortable, pleasant, that's what I was striving for. At school, I was loved by teachers for my diligence, by my classmates for my willingness to help with homework. I was the one who always agreed to stay after school, to decorate the classroom for a holiday, to look after someone else's project. In return, I received approval, a subtle currency without which my self-esteem quickly devalued. When it came time to choose a college, my mom insisted on the psychology department. "With your personality, Lindsay, you'll make a great psychologist. You know how to listen." In truth, I was just afraid to speak up. Everything changed in college when I met Noah. It was in the library, where I spent my evenings working on my textbooks, so I wouldn't have to go back to the noisy dorm room I shared with 3 other girls. "Excuse me, can I use that reference book?" His voice came over my ear so suddenly that I flinched. Tall, with dark curly hair and thin-rimmed glasses, he didn't look like the typical handsome guy on the varsity soccer team. But there was such a lively spark of intelligence and humor in his eyes that I forgot my usual embarrassment. "Sure," I smiled, pushing the book closer. "You're from psychology, right? Lindsay, right?" he asked, sitting down next to me. "I saw you at Professor Jenkins's lecture. Your question about cognitive distortions was brilliant." I blushed. That question had cost me a sleepless night and 3 drafts before I had the courage to raise my hand. "And you're Noah from sociology," I said, surprised. "You spoke at the last conference." He smiled, clearly surprised that I remembered him. We talked until the library closed, and then another 2 hours at the 24-hour coffee shop on the corner of campus. Noah was easy to talk to. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to impress. He was just being himself, smart, attentive, with an unexpected sense of humor. Our relationship developed rapidly but organically, as if we had known each other all our lives. 6 months later, we rented a small apartment together near the university, and by my senior year, Noah proposed to me. Meeting Noah's parents was the first crack in our cloudless happiness. Martha Warren, his mother, greeted me with a cold politeness behind which disappointment was clearly visible. "Noah tells me you're studying psychology," she said over dinner, as if it were something dubious. "What are your plans after graduation?" "I'd like to work as a school psychologist," I answered, feeling my palms sweat. "A school counselor?" Martha raised her eyebrows. "But that's so limited. Noah always said his chosen one would be ambitious." "Mom," Noah said warningly. "What?" "I'm just expressing surprise. A school psychologist is certainly useful, but you can achieve more with a degree from a prestigious university." Noah later explained to me that his mother had always had a clear idea of what his wife should be like. Successful, with a brilliant career, from a family of status. Noah himself grew up in a well-to-do family. His father was a renowned surgeon, and his mother headed a charitable foundation. My parents, a school teacher and a mid-level accountant, were clearly not up to her standards, but we loved each other and that was enough. We got married the year after graduation in a modest ceremony at a country club. Mom fussed over every detail, worried that the Warrens would find it too simple. Rachel, by then a successful marketing executive for a large company, whispered to me, "Don't let them look down on you, Linz. You're just as good as they are." But I was used to smiling and keeping quiet, especially when Martha made a number of small changes to the menu and decor, effectively remodeling everything to her liking. The first years of marriage flew by in a blissful haze of happiness. I got a job at a good private school. Noah was building a career in corporate sociology. We bought a small house in the suburbs, got a dog, and traveled every chance we got. In our third year of marriage, we decided we were ready for kids. Noah always said he wanted a big family, maybe because he himself grew up an only child under the watchful eye of ambitious parents. "Can you imagine, Linz? Our baby will be here," he whispered, putting his hand on my stomach. "We'll teach him everything we know." But the months went by and the pregnancy didn't come. At first, we didn't worry, but after a year of trying with no results, we went to the doctors. "You have a little problem with ovulation," said the gynecologist after a series of examinations. "Nothing critical, but you may need help." The next 2 years turned into a grueling marathon: temperature charts, hormones, then the first IVF attempt, which ended in an early miscarriage. The pain was unbearable, but even harder were the consolations of loved ones. "Maybe this is a sign, Lindsay," my mom said as I cried on her shoulder. "You're both so busy with your careers. Children are a huge responsibility." "Take your time," Martha echoed her. Noah had just started getting serious projects. A baby right now could complicate things. Even Rachel, who by then was already a mother of two, seemed strangely detached. "Motherhood is vastly overrated, Linz," she said over a glass of wine. "Honestly, sometimes I wonder how my career would have turned out if I hadn't gotten pregnant so early." I nodded, smiled, and kept quiet. But inside, I felt a growing emptiness. Noah was the only one who truly understood my pain and shared my desire to become parents. His support was unwavering, even when his mother implied that maybe some women just aren't meant to have children. When we decided to go ahead with our second IVF attempt, I didn't inform my family or Martha. Only Noah and Verna, my friends since college, knew about our plans. And suddenly, like a fairy tale, it happened. The 2 stripes on the test, the confirmation test, the first ultrasound where the tiny heart beat like a metronome. "We did it, Linz," Noah whispered, kissing my fingers in the doctor's office. "We're having a baby." When we announced the news, the reaction was subdued. My mom hugged me, but there was worry in her eyes. "Are you sure you're ready? Psychologically, physically, after everything you've been through?" Rachel went straight to the practical questions. "What about your job? You just got promoted to head of psychological services." Martha was even more direct. "Noah, honey, have you thought about how this will affect your career? You know you're being considered for a position with international travel next year." But we were happy and didn't let other people's doubts cloud our joy. The pregnancy went smoothly. I continued to work until the 7th month, and then I took a vacation. That's when the weirdness started. My mom and Rachel started calling more often, coming over unannounced, regaling me with stories about the challenges of motherhood. "Do you know you won't be able to sleep well, maybe for years?" Rachel asked. "Are you willing to sacrifice everything?" Mom echoed. Martha was more subtle. She sent articles about women who had ruined their careers because of their children, or mothers suffering from postpartum depression. Sometimes I thought they were conspiring, but then I pushed those thoughts away. After all, they were just worried about me, right? Wanted to prepare me for the hardships that lay ahead. Noah noticed my tension after these conversations. "Don't listen to them, Linz. They just don't realize how much this baby means to us." He was right. After all the years of waiting, after all the setbacks and disappointments, this baby was a miracle to us, and no one could dampen our joy. At the time, I didn't realize how deep these caring conversations went. I didn't know that behind my back, there was a network of manipulations aimed at making me doubt my choice. I just smiled and kept quiet, as I always did, trying to keep peace and harmony in the family. And then Emily was born, and the world changed forever. The slam of the front door sounded like the final chord of an evening that had ruined my life. Noah stood at the window, watching my in-laws' cars leave the driveway one by one. No one said goodbye. No one apologized. Just angry looks and tight lips, as if I'd betrayed them, not the other way around. Noah and I sat on the couch for a long time, holding hands and staring into the void. Little Emily slept in her crib, unaware of the storm that had erupted around her birth. "When did you start to suspect something?" I finally asked, when the silence became unbearable. Noah sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose under his glasses, a gesture that always made him look tired. "Remember the conference in Boston 2 months ago? Mark Peterson came up to me during lunch and asked me how your situation was. Said he was always there for me if I needed to talk about family difficulties." I was totally perplexed. I remembered Mark, Noah's coworker, who we'd met a couple times at company parties. A nice man, always polite, but not close enough for Noah to share personal problems with him. "Then there was Susan from HR," Noah continued. "She took me aside and offered me information about family counselors specializing in postpartum depression. Said she'd heard about our difficulties and wanted to help." He fell silent, and I could see the jowls playing on his cheekbones from restrained anger. At first, I thought it was just a rumor. You know how it is in offices. Someone got something wrong, passed it on, snowballed. But then Jason, my boss, called me in for a talk. He said he was worried about my family situation and was willing to reconsider my involvement in international projects so I could spend more time at home. I could feel the blood draining from my face. All these people thought there was a crisis in our family, that I wasn't coping with motherhood, that our marriage was falling apart at the seams. I started investigating. Noah stood up and paced the room. I pretended that I really needed support, and people started sharing what they heard. That's how I realized there were two sources: my mother and your sister. They were spreading these rumors in a deliberate, methodical way. "But why?" My voice shook. "Why would they do that?" "I think they truly believed they were saving you. From me, from Emily, from the life you'd chosen." Noah stopped and looked at me with a look of pain that took my breath away. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted to be sure, to gather proof." I nodded, unable to speak. The betrayal of my family stung inside, but it hurt even more to realize that I'd ignored it for months. Letting them manipulate me, mistaking poisonous concern for love. The next few days passed like a blur. My phone was ringing off the hook with calls and texts I ignored. Noah took time off work to be there for me. Verna came over every day, helping with Emily, bringing food we could barely bring ourselves to eat. On the fourth day, I decided I was ready to talk to my mother. Not over the phone, face to face. Noah was against it, but I insisted. I wanted answers, explanations that would help me understand how the person who gave me life could betray me like that. Mom arrived an hour after I called. She looked aged and haggard, but there was no remorse in her eyes, just a stubborn certainty that she was right. We sat in the kitchen, untouched cups of tea between us. The silence lasted until I found the strength to ask, "Why, Mom? Why did you try to destroy my family?" She flinched as if slapped. "I never wanted to destroy your family, Lindsay. I wanted to protect you." "From what? From happiness? From the child Noah and I had waited so long to have?" "From making a mistake," she said firmly. "You've always been so malleable, always trying to please. I saw you put your dreams, your career on hold for this baby. It was my choice. Was it?" She leaned forward. "Or did you just say yes because Noah wanted kids? Because it was the norm? Because you were afraid of disappointing him?" Her words hit a sore spot, the doubts I myself had felt during the worst moments of my pregnancy struggle. But now, looking into my mother's eyes, I saw the truth. She had never believed in my ability to make my own decisions. Do you really think you know what's best for me? Better than I do? I'm your mother, she answered simply, as if that explained everything. We talked for another hour. She didn't apologize. She kept insisting that she was acting out of love, that I just didn't understand the sacrifice I'd made in giving up my career for motherhood, that someday I would understand and be grateful. When she left, I felt devastated but strangely calm. It was as if a mirror had been shattered, where I saw a distorted reflection of myself, the good girl I had always been taught to be. Talking to Rachel was even harder. She showed up uninvited, barreling into the house like a hurricane, demanding an explanation for why I'd made a scene at a family dinner. You were always so dramatic, she said, not letting me get a word in edgewise. Poor Lindsay, everyone has to tiptoe around her. I looked at the sister I'd always admired and saw a stranger. Angry, jealous, petty. Why were you spreading rumors about my depression? I asked bluntly. Rachel was silent for a moment, then grinned. Why, isn't it true? You've always been weak, Lindsay, always needed saving. I never asked to be rescued. You didn't? She laughed bitterly. Who cried to me every time another test came back negative? Who called hysterically after a miscarriage? Her words were like a knife, precise, merciless, hitting the most vulnerable places. You know what the funny thing is? She continued. You got everything I ever dreamed of. A loving husband, a child when you wanted one, not by accident like I did. A career you can pause and come back to when you're ready. And yet, you don't even realize how lucky you are. There was so much pain and envy in her voice that I forgot my resentment for a moment. My sister, who always seemed so strong and successful, was actually jealous of me. Me, who she had always thought was weak. Rachel, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know, she cut me off. You've never noticed anyone but yourself. With these words, she walked away, leaving me stunned at the injustice of the accusation. In the evening of the same day, Verna came in. She hugged me silently, not demanding explanations, not giving advice, just being there for me. You know what the weirdest thing is? I said as we sat in the backyard watching the sunset. I feel like I've been looking at myself in a crooked mirror my whole life. And now that it's broken, I don't know who I really am. Verna was silent for a long time, then took my hand. I'll tell you who you are, Lindsay. You're a woman who went through hell to become a mother, who loves her husband and child more than life, who has always been kind and sensitive, but never weak. They just didn't want to see your strength because it didn't fit their idea of you. There was a truth in her words that I was beginning to realize. All these years, I had let others define who I was and what I deserved, allowing myself to be manipulated, mistaking toxic care for love. What do I do now? I asked. Start living your life, Verna answered simply. By your own rules. It sounds scary, but trust me, it's worth it. That night, I couldn't sleep for a long time. I lay next to Noah, listening to his steady breathing, and thought that the life I'd known was over. And something new, uncharted, frightening and beautiful was ahead. Spring had come to town, covering the trees with tender green. 8 months had passed since that memorable evening that divided my life into a before and after. 8 months of quiet, healing, and slowly but surely moving forward. Our new home was located in a quiet neighborhood on the east side of town, far enough away from our old place that we wouldn't accidentally run into relatives at the supermarket, but not so far that Noah would have to change jobs. The 2-story house with a small garden cost more than we'd planned, but Noah insisted. He wanted a fresh start for us. Can you imagine Emily playing here in the summer? He said, when we first looked at the house. His enthusiasm was contagious, and I let myself believe that the new place would bring us a new life. Emily was just beginning to walk, holding on to the furniture and our hands. Her first tentative steps became a symbol of my own forward movement, equally tentative but persistent. In the first few months after the separation from my family, I would often wake up in the middle of the night, gasping with anxiety. Noah would hold me in the dark, and we would talk for hours about the betrayal, about the pain, about moving on. He suggested we find a therapist, and though I resisted at first, what kind of psychologist goes to another psychologist? I eventually agreed. Dr. Sylvia Korth, a middle-aged woman with penetrating eyes and a soft smile, became my guide in a world where I was learning to rediscover myself. Lindsay, she said in one of the first sessions, you've lived so long adjusting to the expectations of others that you've forgotten to ask yourself the ultimate question. What do you want for yourself? I didn't know the answer, but I started looking for it. The first step was a support group for new mothers that I found through social media. Every Wednesday, I would leave Emily with Noah and head to the community center, where 5 or 6 women would gather in a circle to share their joys and challenges. I'll never forget my first day there. I sat nervously clutching my teacup and listened as Tashia, a mother of 2, talked about her guilt over sometimes wanting to escape from motherhood. I love my children more than life, she said, but sometimes I just want to be me, not someone else's mom. And then I hate myself for thinking that. All around, understanding heads nodded. And suddenly, I felt tears flowing from my eyes, not bitter tears, but tears of relief. For the first time in a long time, I was among people who understood me without explanation, who didn't judge me for my complicated feelings. You're not alone, Jane, the group leader, told me then. None of us are alone. Those weekly meetings became my lifeline. Gradually, I began to open up, sharing my fears, doubts, and small victories. My new friends listened without judgment, advised without pressure, supported without control. Through them, I found my way back to the profession. Melanie, one of the mothers in the group, worked for an online psychological support service and suggested I try counseling. It's only a couple hours a week, she said. You can work while Emily sleeps. I was hesitant at first, but when Noah got a promotion that meant more responsibility but less travel, I decided. His new position as Director of Social Research allowed him to be home every night and help with Emily while I did counseling via computer. Gradually, I began to regain my professional confidence. 1 session a week turned into 3, then 5. Clients appreciated my empathy and understanding. I especially loved working with young mothers, feeling that my own experience made me a better professional. You seem to glow when you talk about your work, Noah remarked over dinner one night. I'm so glad to see you like that. I smiled. You know, this is the first time I feel like I'm doing what I really want to do, not what's expected of me. He took my hand. You deserve this, Linz. You've always deserved it. But the hardest lesson was asserting my boundaries. Trained from childhood to smile and agree, I found it physically painful to say no or express displeasure. I started small. Refused to lead the school's philanthropy committee, even though a neighbor persistently suggested it. Asked Noah to pick up his stuff from the coffee table instead of silently doing it myself. Stopped responding to texts after 9 p.m., designating that time as private. Every little no strengthened my inner core. Every assertion of my space gave me a new sense of self. Sometimes I would snap, fall back into old habits, but now I noticed it and corrected course. The real test came on a Saturday morning in early May. Noah and I were eating breakfast in the backyard, watching Emily explore the world of blades of grass and flowers, when the doorbell rang, causing us to turn around. Standing on the doorstep were my mother and Rachel. Surprise! Mom said uncertainly, holding out a bag of obviously baby clothes. We thought we'd stop by to check on you. I froze, feeling my pulse quicken. We'd only talked on the phone in the past few months, rare, tense conversations that left me feeling devastated. You could have called ahead, I said, not moving from my seat. Rachel rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic again. We just wanted to see Emily. She must be so grown up. Noah appeared behind me, a silent encouragement that let me know I wasn't alone and that the decision was mine. Come in, I said finally, but we need to talk. They entered the house, looking around at their new surroundings with ill-concealed curiosity. Mom went straight for Emily, but I stopped her with a gesture. Talk first, I said firmly. In the living room. We sat down. Noah took Emily in his arms and walked out, giving us a chance to talk alone. I took a deep breath, remembering everything we discussed with Dr. Court. I'm glad you're here, I began, surprised at the calmness in my voice. But in the future, I ask that you call before you visit and respect our privacy. Lindsay, we're your family, Rachel said indignantly. Do we need a special invitation to see our own niece? Yes, I replied simply. After everything that's happened, that's exactly what you need. Mom leaned forward, her face softening. Honey, we understand that you're hurt, but it's time to put it behind you. Family is family. I shook my head. It's not about resentment, Mom. It's about trust and respect. You violated both, and now we're rebuilding our relationship on my terms. On your terms? Rachel raised an eyebrow. You've always been selfish, but this is a new level. In the past, words like that would have made me cringe, apologize, give in. But not today. If taking care of myself and my family is selfish, then yes, I am selfish, I replied calmly, and I'm not going to let you or anyone else make me feel guilty about it anymore. The conversation lasted almost an hour. There were tears, accusations, attempts at manipulation, but I remained calm and firm. I explained my new boundaries: no surprise visits, no discussing my parenting decisions behind my back, no pressure. We can repair the relationship, but only if they respect my choices and my autonomy. And if we don't agree to those terms? Rachel asked. Then we'll continue to talk on the phone, occasionally, I replied. I won't close the door completely, but I won't let you come in without knocking. When they left, Mom in tears, Rachel in anger, I felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and release. Noah put his arm around me, and I let myself cry on his shoulder. I'm so proud of you, he whispered. You were incredibly strong. But there was still a struggle inside of me. Part of me longed to return to simplicity, to the days when I just smiled and nodded and avoided conflict. That part whined about family harmony, about the need for peace at all costs. The other part, the new and strong part, realized that true love doesn't require self-destruction, that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, not subordination. That night, as I put Emily to bed, I looked at her peaceful face and thought about what I wanted to teach her. Not to be comfortable and silent like I was taught, but to be honest with herself and others. To stand up for my boundaries without fear of losing love. To realize that true love is freedom, not a cage. Perhaps my relationship with my mother and sister will never be the same. Perhaps we have a long way to go to a new equilibrium. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. Not backward, toward the illusion of family harmony, but forward, toward authenticity and self-respect. Exactly 1 year has passed since the night my life was turned upside down. A year of difficult decisions, inner work, and gradual recovery. Today was Emily's 1-year anniversary, and I was preparing for her first real birthday party. Our backyard was transformed. Colorful balloons swayed in the light summer breeze. Garlands of paper flowers braided the wooden patio. The festive table was covered with a tablecloth with painted animals on it, and in the center stood a cake, my creation after 3 failed attempts. It didn't look perfect, with slightly crooked icing, but it was made with love. Maybe I should have had it professionally made. I nervously asked Noah, who was setting up the high chair. No way, he kissed the top of my head. This one is 1,000,000 times better. It has soul. Soul. Strange word for cake, but I knew what he meant. Over the past year, I'd learned to value authenticity over perfection, sincerity over politeness. This was reflected in everything from the crooked cake to the guest list, which I compiled with only one principle in mind. Those who had truly supported us through the hard times were invited. Verna and her husband, a few couples from a support group for young mothers, a couple of Noah's close colleagues, our new neighbors who often helped with Emily. No one from my family was on the list. Our relationship with my mom and Rachel had remained strained over the past months, though we had tried to communicate by phone. Martha, Noah's mother, wasn't among the invitees either. There was too much unspoken and unresolved tension between us. So a call from her, 3 days before the party, took me by surprise. Lindsay! Her voice sounded uncertain, not at all like the bossy Martha I knew. I hope I'm not distracting you. Hello, Martha. I tried to keep my voice steady, though my heart was racing. What can I do for you? A pause, then a deep sigh. I know Emily's about to turn a year old, and I'd like to see her. If you'd let me, of course. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to say no, to remind her of all the horrible things she'd said about my baby. The other part of me realized that Emily was her only granddaughter, and to cut them off from each other completely would be unfair. We're planning a little celebration this Saturday, I finally said. But I think we should talk before then. In private. Yes, of course. I could hear the relief in her voice. What time would be convenient for you? We agreed to meet at a cafe near my house the next day. When I hung up, I stood at the window for a long time, watching Emily playing in the yard. She had grown so much this year, from a helpless infant to an inquisitive, smiling child with a personality. I thought about how much Martha had missed from her granddaughter's life because of her pride and prejudice, and how much we had all lost because of our inability to speak honestly to each other. Noah supported my decision to meet his mother. I never asked you to choose between me and your family, he said that evening, and I won't ask you to choose between you and my mother. It's your decision, and I trust you. His words touched me to the core. Noah always knew how to be supportive without imposing his opinion, respecting my autonomy. I had learned so much from him over the years. Martha was already waiting for me at the cafe when I arrived. She looked different, as if she had aged a few years, gaunt. Her once perfect hair was streaked with gray that she'd stopped covering up. Thank you for agreeing to meet me, she said as I sat down across from her. Yeah, didn't know if you'd even want to talk to me. I ordered my tea and then answered. To be honest, I wasn't sure I wanted to for a long time, but I've learned a lot about forgiveness this year. Not for others, for myself. Martha nodded, her fingers fidgeting nervously with her napkin. Lindsay, I don't know where to begin. I've said so many terrible things. Unforgivable behavior. Why? I asked you directly. I always wanted to know why you were all against my child. She was silent for a long time, gathering her thoughts. I thought I was protecting Noah, she finally said. All his life, I've seen him sacrifice his desires for others. In high school, in college, at work. He's always put other people's needs before his own. When you started talking about the baby, I was sure it was your idea, that you were pressuring him, and he was just going along with it like he always does. I shook my head. But it wasn't. Noah wanted kids even more than I did. I know that now, she grinned bitterly. He made it very clear to me when he stopped talking to me. But I was blind then. I only saw what I wanted to see. She took a sip of coffee, then continued. And then I met your mother and sister. They too were worried that you were sacrificing your career, your dreams. We found common ground in our fears. And instead of just talking to you both, we started this horrible conspiracy. I listened, surprised at how calmly I took her words. A few months ago, they would have stirred up a storm of emotion in me, but now I felt only a slight sadness at how much time and effort we'd wasted on misunderstanding. You know what's ironic, Martha? You all tried so hard to protect us from making the wrong decisions that you almost destroyed what was truly important in our family. She lowered her eyes. I'm not sorry, Lindsay. I've behaved terribly. This isn't about forgiveness, I shook my head. It's about whether we can move forward, whether we can learn to respect each other's choices, even if we don't agree with them. We talked for another hour. Martha talked about how hard this year had been for her without her son and granddaughter, how she was rethinking her actions. I shared what I was going through myself: therapy, support groups, a new job. At the end of the conversation, I invited her to Emily's birthday party, but with one condition. I'm not asking that we become one big happy family right away, but I am asking for respect, for my decisions, for my boundaries, for my role as a mother. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I swear, Lindsay, I'll be a better person, for Noah, for Emily, and for you. On the day of the party, our yard was filled with laughter and conversation. Emily, dressed in a blue dress with embroidered daisies, was the center of attention, smiling at the guests, trying to dance to the music, clapping her hands enthusiastically when Noah blew bubbles for her. Martha came with a large plush panda and kept a little apart, unsure of her place in this celebration. But Noah, when he saw his mother, came over and hugged her, the first physical contact between them in many months. I watched as she clung to him, her shoulders shaking with held-back sobs. When it was time for cake, we gathered around the table. Emily sat in her high chair, looking curiously at the single candle. Noah asked for silence and raised a glass of non-alcoholic champagne. To our princess, who changed our lives for the better. Everyone applauded, and then I felt a strange urge. Standing next to my husband, I raised my glass too. I want to thank all of you, the people who have been with us in the most difficult times, who have supported us without judging or trying to change us. A year ago, I thought I'd lost my family, but now I realize I've just found the real one, the ones who love us for who we are. My gaze slid to Martha, and I added, and I'm grateful for new beginnings, second chances, and the wisdom that comes through forgiveness. After cake and presents, as the guests scattered around the yard enjoying the warm summer evening, my phone rang. Seeing my mom's name on the screen, I didn't answer right away. But then, glancing at Emily, happily playing with her new toys, I made up my mind. Hi, Mom. Hello, dear. Her voice sounded unsure. I just wanted to wish Emily a happy birthday. Dad and I sent a present, and it should arrive one of these days. Thank you, I replied. She's playing in the garden right now. We're having a little party. There was a pause, filled with unspoken words. Could you send pictures? Mom finally asked. I'd like to see how she's grown. I noticed that she didn't ask to attend the party, didn't try to impose herself. A small but significant sign that she was beginning to respect my boundaries. Of course, I said more gently. I'll send it over tonight. Lindsay, her voice trembled. I miss you. Those simple words touched something deep inside me. Not an apology, not an excuse, just an honest admission of feeling. I miss you too, Mom, I replied, wondering at the truth of those words. Maybe we could get together next week, just you and me, to talk. I'd really like that. I could hear the hope in her voice. As I hung up the phone, I noticed Noah watching me from across the garden. He raised an eyebrow in mute question, and I nodded, letting him know it was okay. He smiled and went back to playing with Emily, who was helping build a tower of soft cubes. In the evening, when the guests had dispersed and we had cleaned up the last traces of the party, I walked into the nursery. Emily was already asleep, exhausted from the day's experiences. Her small breasts were rising and falling, her fingers twitching slightly in her sleep. I sat in the chair next to the crib and just looked at her, remembering that evening a year ago when I heard the words of my mother-in-law. She ruined her life with this child. At the time, those words had hurt to the core. Now they caused only a sad smile, because the truth was quite different. Emily hadn't ruined my life. She'd saved it. Saved it from fake smiles and the eternal desire to please, from the fear of being myself and saying what I think, from the quiet desperation of a woman who lives by other people's expectations. My child, through her simple existence, taught me the most important thing: that I am worthy of respect, that my desires matter, that true love never requires self-denial. Emily turned in her sleep, and the moonlight from the window illuminated her face. I saw Noah's features in it, the stubborn chin, the curve of her eyebrows. But I saw myself too, in the shape of her eyes, in the line of her lips. We'd both changed over the year, grown she physically, me spiritually. I reached out and touched her warm cheek lightly. Emily didn't wake up, only smiled in her sleep, as if sensing my presence. And in that moment, I felt so full of love and gratitude that tears came to my eyes. A year ago, I was a woman who let others define her worth. Today, I have become a mother who knows the value of herself and is willing to protect what she loves. A woman who is no longer afraid to stand up for her boundaries. A person who has finally learned to live her own life, not someone else's. And for this unsolicited gift of strength, I will be forever grateful to my daughter.
Любі глядачі, дякую вам за перегляд, ставте лайки та підписуйтесь на канал. Також напишіть в коментарях, чи погоджуєтесь ви з Дженніфер, чи вона мала розказати все матері, чи ні, чи мала все розказати своєму коханцю щодо свого чоловіка, чи ні. І також прокоментуйте, чи вам сподобалось це відео.